Good day. Welcome to Putnam Talk Radio. Happy New Year. We are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built. By Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard all throughout the Hudson Valley. And by ENT Allergy and Associates, with locations throughout the Hudson Valley from Westchester up into Dutchess County and right into the city of Poughkeepsie. I'm John Marino, and this is What's Happening in the Lower Hudson Valley. Here on What's Happening in the Lower Hudson Valley, we are joined by David Shenton, the music director at Greenville Community Chutch in Scarsdale, down in Westchester. Now, on Thursday, the 19th of January, David Shenton is going to be involved in a public reading as a live performance of an original musical. It's called Brush Strokes, and he co-wrote it with Garrison resident Jim Semmelman. Hello, Jim.
Hey,
Jim,
John. How you doing?
Great to have you here. You're a one-time stage manager for NBC's Today Show. That's on your resume, among other fantastic accomplishments. And it's going to be at the Philipstown Depot Theatre in Garrison. Again, that's on January 19th, featuring Tony Award-winning actress Karen Ziemba. Karen, we thank you for joining us, too. And you've recruited other top talent, including actors Rachel Fairbanks and Jerry Dixon. David Shenton, what was the genesis of this project?
Well, I think I should leave Jim to tell you about the story of the project. But basically, Jim and I have been working together for a number of years on cabaret shows and jazz shows with a number of wonderful singers. And And at one point, Jim wrote to me and he said, I have this musical, which we need a new score for it for various reasons. So the whole show was written. So he handed me the book and the lyrics and said, I need a new score. So I created a new score. And that was basically the genesis of it. It was two friends getting together. Jim knows my work. I know his work. I've always wanted to work with him on something other than producing musical performances. So I thought this was a great chance, and I love his writing style. I think it's very succinct, very poignant. I think the story's beautiful, and I found it fairly easy to make sense of exactly what he wanted musically for this show. So that's my part. I'm the composer and arranger for the show, and I'm thrilled to be doing it, especially in Westchester.
Now, Jim, how did the book come about?
It was based on a play called Last Chapter, Best Chapter by a gentleman named Stephen Chinlin, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Initially, I was just brought in to write some lyrics for it, and it was kind of just something to do. And it just grew and grew and grew. And Stephen Chinlin allowed me to make changes to the story, to enhance the story, to change the title of the story. And little by little, I sort of recreated the play into what is currently the musical Brush Strokes.
Mm-hmm. When you write something, you personally, how often do you rewrite, re-edit, or are you the type that you go through it once or twice and you say, all right, let's give it a shot? Or are you one of those who look at it at 7 p.m. and at midnight you're looking at it again and saying, maybe we should rework something?
Yeah, I'm kind of that guy. In fact, I sent the cast yesterday a new scene 14.
Will that be it, or might there be some changes to that too?
I hope that's it, but it'll a lot of it depends on our actors. I mean, they have a great input, they have a great understanding of the material of the characters, and they write it along with me. I mean, Karen especially, she's been with us for quite some time now. They always come up with ideas, or they think, no, the character wouldn't do it that way. They might do it this way, or do we really need this? Or let me act that moment. We don't need to say it. So their input is just as important as anybody else's input.
Mm-hmm. Karen, over 40 years ago, this was 1980, I was involved with community theater in my neighborhood in the Bronx, and it was an off-Broadway group, and we did some shows off-Broadway at that time, and we did a production of Lovers and Other Strangers, and I got the lead role as Jerry, and the producer and director said to me, you brought a perspective. You got the role because you brought a perspective to Jerry that we hadn't seen before. It was totally different. And we said, yeah, Jerry could be like that too. How do you approach your different roles?
I think, so much of who you are is in every character you play, just inherently, just because you bring your own personality and your own gifts to whatever role you're playing. But you just, in your case, there's just something about you that was really right for that. They felt you really brought out, you inhabited that character and you brought something out in him that nobody had seen before. So, you hope to do that with the roles that you play, but it's, just speak the truth and try to be honest with what this person's story this person is trying to tell and the relationships that they have. It's sort of just being human. And not gilding it with anything, just,
Karen, I equated to, let's say you take an artist like a Sinatra or a Tony Bennett, and you see they've done so many different versions of some of their songs through the years. And the way you play that role today, 10 years from now, you might play it totally different in a way that might have been unheard of before or unseen before.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
David, as you put the show together from a musical standpoint, how do you adjust day by day, step by step, note by note?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I mean, just to, jump onto what you just said, I'm a big fan of Glenn Gould and the Goldberg Variations, of course, when he recorded the first version as a young man. It was a completely different recording than the one he recorded as an older man, although he didn't make it to old age, unfortunately. But when he was 50, he re-recorded them or somewhere around then, and it was completely different. And that is the experience of his life as a musician. So my life as a musician evolves, and the more my music evolves is based on what inspires me as I get older and what I like to remember. And then on top of that, I get to work with incredible artists like Karen, who has actually been incredibly helpful for me because she sung through the songs and said, well, I think this should be this way, and this key should be lower, and this note should be held out longer, because this is the moment where the emotion gets to its highest point. So I definitely believe in what Rostropovich, the great Russian cellist, said: there are no teachers, there are only students, and I will continue learning every day until I die. And I just think getting to work with artists who have had illustrious careers like Karen and Jerry and Jim just helps me. So I have no ego about this. I don't mind changing things. I just want what's best for the show. And as far as musically goes, how did I start about writing this piece? Having read the script, I just decided on a kind of genre for each character. I think Karen's character, Virginia, is an artist, classical style artist. So I think classical music, there are elements of classical music to her character. To Jerry's character, named Eric, he is more fun, lugubrious. And then Mitzi, the granddaughter of Virginia, is very jazzy, and a lot of her quote songs in the show are more like recitatives from opera. They kind of lead into other, but they're done in a jazz idiom. So I think we have these three distinct styles, and I think for a show like this, it really kind of helps highlight the very different characters within the show. And then when they come together at the end, I think it's also subconsciously the three characters coming together and all experiencing things from one another.
David, I know you're a golfer. I've always looked at the best coaches in sports as those who can adapt to what they have to work with. It's not about, just my system, and you have to be able to play my system, or you can't play for me. They have to be able to adjust for in basketball, for example. If you don't have a guy who's 6'5" or 6'8", and on a high school team, if your tallest player is 5'11", well, rebounding may not be your forte for your team this season. You have to develop a concept that will work without that 6'5" or 6'8" guy. Do you have to work around or with your performers based upon what they are able to do individually?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest conundrum is that when I'd written this score, I suddenly realized that I had written a lot of the songs with a too large a range. Because when I sing things through, I would never sing things on stage. I'm not a singer. I'm a pianist and violinist. But so when I hand over the score, I suddenly realize, wow, that has too big a range. So you have to find some way of working the keys. And that for me has been the biggest challenge and the biggest, but it's a joyful challenge. It's one that I accept, and it's one that I love to do, because it's like a puzzle, trying to figure out how can I take what I've written, but make it the same, but make the range smaller. So you do that by choosing different keys, and then having great suggestions from people like Karen who say, well, what if we do this with a melody? And it often is perfect. And that's when you have a really great collaboration, when everybody wants to throw in ideas. And as a postlude to that, I will say that I still haven't figured out golf. So I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, Tom Avezzano, who got inducted into the Westchester Sports Hall of Fame, he's the guy who runs the Sprain Lake Golf Course along Sprainbrook Parkway in Greenburgh. When he got inducted, and I was there that night of his induction, and he had told me when I had spoken to him on Westchester Talk Radio before that during the fall, he said, don't try to conquer the game of golf. No one has, no one ever will. Don't think you're going to be the guy to do that. He said the right approach is come out there and let's have fun. Whatever happens, happens, because with all the elements involved in golf, what you can do one day may not be what you can do tomorrow.
Yeah, fully agree with that. And, and when I teach piano to my students, I actually use a few sporting metaphors. This is completely off the subject and I'm talking a lot, but when I play the piano, I push down and I pretend that the key is going to hit the ground. And then I use my whole body in the same way that you would swing through a club. You don't just hit the ball and stop. You swing through with your body when you play the piano. And that's the kind of idiom I think of when I compose, like, let's swing through, let's kind of create something that flows all the way through and doesn't just stop. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and it reaches a climax. And that climax is hopefully when the story develops within the play.
Mm-hmm. Jim Semmelman, as a writer.
Yeah, I was going to say,
do you kind of roll around at night and you wake up 3:00 in the morning with thoughts and ideas about what you did or what you should have done or what you might write next?
No.
You don't?
Because I really don't consider myself a writer. I've come on board on certain projects and I've kind of...
But if you wrote, you are a writer.
I guess that's true.
It's like a politician, like Donald Trump saying, I'm not a politician. Well, you became president. You're a politician at that point, no matter how you try to couch it. So
yes, I will say things do come at the oddest of hours, and thank goodness for iPhones. So I can grab it and put down a note or two so I don't forget about it in the morning, and then adapt it into whatever I'm writing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you put that finished product on paper, how often do you talked about it before, are you ever totally happy with what you've done? Or do you look at a show and say, next time around, I'm going to tweak this and tweak that? Once it's up there, for example, and out there.
I don't think anybody's ever completely 100% satisfied with what they do creatively. I think there's always room because life changes, you age, there are things that affect you from the outside world, and that all plays into what happens in any given moment. It's synonymous with what you were saying with the golf thing. I mean, live theater is the same way. You never conquer it completely. You're never going to be the perfect thing. But you have to be in the moment of each time you get up there and perform. That's why live theater is so incredible. I mean, the feedback from the audience and what your mood is that day and how your voice feels, what you ate for dinner, everything affects that performance.
Karen, as a performer, now looking at what Jim said, have you ever gone out there knowing that I should do this, but I see an opportunity to maybe do this today and give it a try?
Just saying yes, and sometimes the other actors don't like that or aren't expecting that. So
that would be my next question. How do those other actors and actresses react when you do that?
Well, especially
I did it a few times along the way, so.
When you're in a long-running show, especially, people get used to the same old, and so you have to be careful. You have to hit your marks, and you have to be in the same place at the same time. That's only professional. Mm-hmm. But as far as emotionally, or the way you approach something, a thought, or you hit a note a certain way, or hopefully things get richer and better as time goes on, and as you inhabit the play more, as you inhabit the characters more. That's one thing I love about theater, when you do have a chance to have a little bit of a run. So each day you build on that. And you have the relationships deepen too with the other actors. But yeah, sometimes
you talk about going on a long run for a show, which you've done. Do you sit down with the directors, with the producers, with everybody involved after a certain amount of time and say, all right, I think that's enough in this scene here with this. Let's do something new, new, creative, and innovative? No, you don't.
No. They'll sneak in and stand in the back every once in a while and check out and say, "What are you doing up there?" Or they'll say, "Oh, I really like that."
Right. Doesn't matter as long as it works, right? Whatever it might be, right? David Shenton, you're a private instructor musically also too, right? Tell us about that.
Well, I teach piano. I taught a lesson this morning at 9 a.m. actually. And I teach violin, and I teach arranging and composition as well. And a lot of the stuff I do is on Zoom, which the word I'd never heard before the pandemic, of course. So Zoom has been a godsend to all of those musicians who were able to continue working to a certain degree. But I love it. I particularly love it when I have a student who's very invested, who really wants to learn. And I have a number of those. So I just really enjoy it. I love passing on my knowledge to the next generation, especially of classical music.
How would someone get in touch with you who would like to avail themselves of your abilities and services?
Oh, gosh. Wow. Well, they could go to my website, which is shentonmusic.com, SHENTON music, all one word.com, and send me a private message. I take students of all ages. My youngest student was 5. My oldest was 85. And she passed away of Alzheimer's, late-stage Alzheimer's. But what was incredible is that in their later years, it was an older couple, very wealthy. They had this whole floor of this apartment on 72nd Street on the Upper East Side. And after she couldn't play the piano anymore, he would hire me to come over and just play for them. And she couldn't remember who he was, who I was. But the second I played Rodgers and Hammerstein, they both started singing it, and her hand went to his hand, and they held each other's hands. And for those few minutes, they knew who each other were. And that's something that, it's a similar story to a lot of others I've heard, that music really opens up a part of the brain. And that's why I think music is so important. It's the first thing to get cut from every college, but everybody watches TV and listens to the radio. How do they think those people got there? Through music education, through theater education. People think it's a flippant, gratuitous thing, but it really isn't. It really is something that everybody needs and will need for the rest of existence, because it's soulful. It's the only thing that can touch your soul. I can hit a beautiful drive on the golf course, but it doesn't touch me the way Karen's voice touches me when she sings a beautiful note. It's just not the same.
Jim Semmelman, your years with the Today Show, that experience, how does that translate to what you are doing now with Brushstrokes?
That's an interesting question. Well, on the Today Show, I was a stage manager. So I'm the one counting backwards from 5. I'm the one getting everybody in place, making sure everything's happening the way it's supposed to happen. So that lends itself to me more as a producer, which I also do more than but watching other performers and talking to Nicole Kidman, talking to Dustin Hoffman, talking to these different people and watching them do what they do certainly has an influence on me as a writer and as a director or producer.
Karen, back in the year 2000, you won a Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Musical for the show Contact. When you found out, I'm the one, it's me, I won, what went through your mind at that moment?
Well, I was saying Rosie O'Donnell in 2000 was the Master of Ceremonies, Mistress of Ceremonies at the Tony Awards, and we had a meeting. All of the nominees had a meeting with her, and she said, 45 seconds, get on, get off. We don't want anybody to get preempted. We don't want any songs to be left out. And I really find too that when somebody goes on and on and on and on, it's sort of like, so just, I just wanted to thank the people that were important to me and that had really helped me not only in my career, but also with the show and what was at hand. And so I kind of got on, got off. And so it was sort of like I was thinking about get my, so I remember running down the aisle and running up the stairs really quickly. It was sort of like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. But it was very validating and a wonderful moment.
Do you strive for something like that as an actress, as a performer, or is this one of those things that if and when it happens, it happens? Like a baseball player, the best way to hit a baseball is not to try to hit a home run. If your technique is right and you go through it the right way, you'll hit some home runs.
I love your sporting analogies. They're great.
I think they apply to life, which I think a lot of people don't understand, and why I'm so into sports, because sports teaches you many different things about getting up when you get knocked down, about having options on plays. Those options on plays, if you learn that in high school especially, they'll give you options in life in different situations. And you hear stories of successful people. They all had options that they went through. They may have struck gold with option 1 and not have had to go through options 2, 3, 4, and 5 like some do, but they had a plan. They had those options there. And to me, that's what it's about. Yeah,
it's also about working on a team too, especially
right.
theater.
You can't do it by yourself. No.
So is maybe not golf, but in a team sport situation, you can definitely compare. But anyway, I forget the question because I was listening to what you were. Yeah,
we were talking about about the sports analogy and how you reacted when you won that Tony Award, and how does that help you now, or how do you work with that now with what
I
you
think
do?
Is what you said.
Is that a goal again to get something like that, or is it about just let me get out there, do what I do, and whatever happens, happens?
That's exactly what it is, and I have to say that. Even though I had done many, many shows and had been nominated actually before that and nominated afterwards for other things, it's a lot of what an award is. It's not only your performance, but it's what's surrounding you. It's the people that you're on stage with. It's the show that you're in that boosts and buoys everything else too. I was in a really good show. That really helps. And I had a couple of great leading men in that show. I mean, it's a collaborative effort.
If you don't have a writer like Jim, for example, you're not going to win an award, right? A lot of that is what it comes down to, right?
I don't really think of that as I get into this fray with Jim and with David. It's more like creating something new and trying to tell a story in the best way that we can and enhance it and, make it economical and yet try not to leave anything out that's important, as they were talking about before. There's like when I was working with David, like the other day, we had a little a session, a phone session, and we were talking about a song, and I thought there was one lyric that needed to be held out because it had so much emotion to it. And he says, "Yeah, I think we'll add a couple more bars of music to that." Sometimes it's supposed to just stopping something immediately. It's like you really let it fly, let it soar a little bit more, or if maybe something to be cut off sooner because you get choked up or because you're mad or whatever, it's all that kind of stuff. All those little details though, that make something it have more meaning or hit a nerve or something like that. And so that's the fun part, the rehearsal and creating something. And because it's something that hasn't been done before, even though it comes from a book, from a novel, it's that's what's exciting about it.
Now, Jim, going back to your days with the Today Show and other work like that you've done, Karen talked about teamwork. That's been your role in a lot of what you've done through the years, getting that team together and helping that team do what they are supposed to do. Like in this instance here, you're the writer, you're the genesis of what happened here. And without that, we can't have, like some athletes, like Walter Payton used to tell his team, the late, great Chicago Bears running back, one of the all-time best players in National Football League history, used to say, there is no I in team.
Correct. We keep hitting that on that word, collaboration. And that to me is the best part of this whole process. If you have people around you that you trust and respect, you just sit back and listen, and you're 9 times out of 10 you're gonna hit the field goal or whatever you're after. That's, to me, is the most exciting part of doing this kind of thing, is the collaborative.
Mm-hmm. And David Shenton, one of the schools where I work as a public address announcer is Bridgehampton High School on Long Island. And all the athletes there and all the athletic people there, the athletic director, the coaches, they wear a T-shirt. The T-shirt says, "We, not me." This is what this is all about, right?
Yeah, it really is. And for me, I started off life as a classical violinist. So when I was old enough, and I think I was 10 when I joined my first orchestra. So I was part of a team. The orchestra is a team. The good thing about playing with an orchestra is that you learn how to work with other people from a young age. And you're all in this together. And if somebody plays the wrong note, somebody plays spare, you're kind of laying down the team. So when I switched over to piano when I was in my early 20s, I took everything I'd learned from being an orchestral musician about listening to accompany and making sure that whoever I was working with, it was a collaboration. And that I don't overplay, or I try and work with every singer and try and enhance their sound, but I don't try and override them. And sometimes you hear that. Sometimes you hear musicians who go out there and they overplay or they play too loud or whatever. I always try and play underneath. I always try and make it a collaboration. And the same thing's true of the composition. I couldn't have written this final score without the help of Jim or Karen or Jerry or Rachel. I really take everybody's advice seriously, because if you're going to put something out in the world, the only person who thinks it's good is me at that point. And then when people start saying, well, what about this? You have to trust those people, because they're the ones with the experience doing this. And without that collaborative spirit, you're going to run into troubles. So I think collaboration is absolutely crucial.
Thursday, January 19th at the Philipstown Depot Theatre in Garrison. The show is Brush Strokes. David Shenton, is it a free performance or do we need to get tickets?
I'm going to defer to Jim Semmelman for that question, if you don't mind.
Jim,
You need to make a reservation. There's no charge, but we ask if you can to have a donation.
How do you make that reservation?
You go to philipstowndepotheatre.org, and Philipstown's with one L and theaters with an R-E.
Got it. In Garrison, along the waters, along the Hudson River in Putnam County. We thank you, the collaborative team of David Shenton, Jim Semmelman, and Karen Ziemba, all getting together to put on Brushstrokes January 19th. That's a Thursday over at the Philipstown Depot Theatre in Garrison. We thank you all. Best of luck with the show. Break a leg, figuratively, of course, and Happy New Year.
You too.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
We thank you for being part of Putnam Talk Radio. I'm John Marino, produced by Sharc Creative. What's happening in the Lower Hudson Valley, made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built. By Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard throughout the Hudson Valley. And by ENT, Allergy and Associates, with locations throughout the Hudson Valley, from Westchester right up into the city of Poughkeepsie in Dutchess County. Catch all of our Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, Rockland, Westchester, and Fairfield County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube. Also, look for us on Apple Podcasts, because, yes, we are on there now, too. Happy New Year from all of us to you at Sharc Creative and Putnam Talk Radio.